On a beautiful morning in a field with a quaint house and a serene lake in the background, a little girl named Marianne spots a carriage approaching with her parents aboard, and she's absolutely thrilled. Her mother, holding a baby, remarks that Marianne must have been lonely, but the little girl quickly refutes it, mentioning that she had Rose with her. Meanwhile, a man and a child are seen observing the house from a distance. The mother introduces Marianne to her new baby brother, Cheyenne, who stretches his arms out for a hug and receives a loving kiss from his sister. The baby is visibly surprised by the kiss, and his eyes glow with delight. 3 years later, Marianne is racing with Cheyenne and wins yet again. She teases him for being slow, while he counters that she's simply too fast. Marianne agrees, highlighting that as the elder, it's natural. During this time, their father opens the gate and the girl follows him, while she muses that his sister has too much energy. The father comments that Marianne is as lively as always, and she shares that, like the color of her hair, she is as bright as the sun. Subsequently, the father points out that Cheyenne seems as responsible as ever, but the boy feels his sister is more responsible, which she confirms again, citing her seniority. Privately, Marianne thinks that her brother is really responsible since he always helps their mother and has stopped wetting the bed. Moreover, he sometimes bears a worried expression as if he were an adult. Later, she observes Cheyenne making gestures and repeating phrases like fireball and wind gust. Curious, she asks what he's doing. He bashfully says it's nothing, but she knows he occasionally enjoys playing pretend and finds it amusing. When night falls and the family is dining together, Cheyenne asks if monsters really exist. His father affirms they do, explaining they are dangerous and attack humans, which is why the children must stay within the property boundaries. Cheyenne also wants to know if fairies and nature spirits are real. Though he has never heard of nature spirits, the father confirms fairies do exist but are rare, and some traders have become experts in finding them. Finally, the boy eagerly asks if magic also exists, an enigmatic energy capable of manifesting light and fire, but the father denies its existence. The boy considers that perhaps the father simply isn't aware of its real existence, but the father, while acknowledging there are things beyond his knowledge, insists that his education should be sufficient. He then asks where his son heard such stories. However, Marianne interrupts to ask if her brother is alright since he looks pale. After the boy reassures her that he's fine, she reflects that he never again brought up the topic of magic, a word previously unheard by anyone. 3 years on, Marianne trains with a stick until she's tired, then sits next to Cheyenne, who's holding a book. He asks why she trains so hard, and she replies that it's because she's the eldest and needs to be ready in case of trouble, like a monster invasion. Marianne discovers she's adept at such things and feels it's her responsibility to protect her younger brother. Thus, not being very scholarly, she finds her usefulness in physical tasks, which she can manage well. By late afternoon, Marianne continues her training by the lake. Rose can't fathom how the girl doesn't tire from all-day exertion, especially since she herself is worn out after assisting her grandfather. Rose notes that Shen spent his day studying as usual, highlighting how the siblings are complete opposites. This observation reminds Marianne that Cheyenne hasn't mentioned that topic for a long time, but she's certain she understands why he studies so hard. Suddenly, a shimmer overtakes the water in front of the girls, who stare in awe at it. The next morning, as the siblings walk together, Cheyenne recalls their mother's warning not to stray too far, but Marianne assures him there are no monsters nearby and pulls him by the hand to the lake. Once there, Cheyenne worries their mother will be upset with them, and Marianne thinks she might be, but it will be worth it. As soon as she says this, luminous spheres emerge from the water, creating a stunning display in the late afternoon. The girl explains that these orbs always appear at sunset, though she doesn't know why. After she discovered them, she brought her parents to see, but for some reason, they couldn't see the spheres. Now it appears Cheyenne can see them too. He wonders if perhaps adults are unable to see them, but his sister explains that some children also fail to see them. In fact, she shares that apparently different people perceive them differently. While the orbs flicker for Marianne, some children saw actual lights. Ultimately, this mystery feels like magic, she concludes, echoing Cheyenne's earlier words about how magic can create light. Cheyenne is surprised his sister remembers this, and she acknowledges her memory isn't great, but when it comes to her brother, she never forgets. Furthermore, it was after this discussion that Cheyenne began to seem very sad. After witnessing and discussing these phenomena, the boy finally starts to feel better. The next day, the siblings quickly finish their lunch, leaving their parents dumbfounded. They then run straight to the lake, where they've brought wooden buckets and fishing rods. Cheyenne tires from the exercise, and his sister comments on his lack of stamina due to his sedentary lifestyle, which he can't deny. With plenty of time before sunset, Cheyenne wants to explore the lake further. First, he aims to discover where the light orbs originate, suspecting they might come from a living entity within the lake. The plan is to fill 3 buckets with water, then add sand and rocks to one, aquatic plants to another, and fish to the last. Sometime later, they had done exactly as planned, except for catching the fish. While Marie fished, Cheyenne smiled and said he was very happy to have his sister by his side. To play the role of the older sister, Marianne explained that she would always be there for her younger sibling. Since this was something he wanted to do, it was only natural for her to help. Moreover, if something like magic really existed, she wouldn't want to miss out on it because life would be much more exciting if it were real. On this note, Shan promised that if magic did exist, Marie would be the first person he would tell. Meanwhile, Marie's rod hooked something. She pulled an Eden trout from the lake and placed it in the last bucket as planned. Shan asked if the trout was a common fish, and his sister confirmed that it was, as they could be found anywhere. Hearing this, the boy became less hopeful of witnessing something extraordinary. At that moment, Rose arrived and asked her friend if the boy was her younger brother. Marianne confirmed and asked the young man to say hi, since she had never seen that girl before. After his greeting, Rose introduced herself as a lonely flower blooming in this desolate village. Not really enjoying this talk, Marie hurriedly told her brother that the girl was just a commoner posing. Rose got angry, remarked that this was unnecessary, and then inquired what the people were up to. Marie explained that they were fishing, but what her friend didn't understand was why they would fish in that particular lake. To cut through the mystery, Marianne revealed that her brother already knew what was going on. Then Rose highlighted that those light orbs were indeed very interesting. Marie asked if her friend had also come to see the spheres, and she admitted that she occasionally came to witness this phenomenon. Excited about the topic, Cheyenne asked if the little girl knew anything about the light orbs, like what created them or what they were. However, Rose knew nothing. She just enjoyed looking at them and nothing more. As the hours passed, the sun set and the phenomenon occurred once more. Cheyenne and Marie looked at the 3 buckets, but none of them were glowing. The boy asked if there was anything else living in the lake that they could try to catch again. Marie thought there were many other things, but Rose believed it would be quite difficult to collect them all, especially since they couldn't even be sure how many things there were. With that, Cheyenne decided to enter the lake. Worried about her brother, Marie also began to remove her top clothing. Embarrassed, Cheyenne asked what she was doing, and she explained that her dress would get wet. Thus, the siblings ventured into the lake and made their way to the center of a spectacle. Cheyenne touched one of the spheres and said it was warm and ticklish, but the sensation was pleasant. Not wanting to be left behind, Marie did the same. Cheyenne then dipped his face into the water. As it was too murky to see the bottom, he understood that the light orbs came from something living underwater, perhaps even from a fish, because the source of the light was moving, although the boy couldn't exactly tell which creature was doing it. Since they couldn't see much more than that, the siblings left the lake. Cheyenne thanked her for the help, but Mary said they were a family and should always support each other, so there was no need to thank her for such a little thing. However, Cheyenne felt the need to make it clear he was grateful because even though everything she had said was true, that didn't mean he should hide his feelings. Amidst this, Rose displayed an Eden trout female she had caught. According to Marianne, the females lived deeper and were harder to catch than the males. But since it was spawning season, they came to the shallow waters. Suddenly, the light orbs began to emerge from the bucket with the trout couple, and everyone was astonished. With this, Cheyenne began to believe that this phenomenon was the mating action of the Eden trout. As Marie didn't understand what that meant, Rose explained that it was when someone asked another person to marry them. Marie then thought she didn't need to ask anything of her brother, but eventually, she would have to lay eggs. Embarrassed, Cheyenne yelled that Marianne wouldn't lay eggs and that siblings couldn't marry. However, the girl took this as if her brother didn't love her. The next day, Marie reported that her mother was angry because she had said she was going to marry Cheyenne. The mother had said the same thing as the boy. Because of this, the child felt guilty for thinking she had said something very bad, but she emphasized that she only wanted to stay with her brother. Cheyenne explained that they didn't need to marry for that, but the little girl thought it would be much more special that way. If they didn't marry, they would have to marry other people and would never be together again. As his sister began to cry after saying this, Cheyenne ended up saying that he would marry her. Marie asked if this wouldn't be a problem for their father. Then the boy said that if it were a matter of an heir, they could simply adopt someone. The girl replied that it didn't seem easy, but Cheyenne swore he was serious. Even though he was still a child after all, he also wanted to stay with his sister. If she wanted, he could even make a vow. According to Marianne, that was a heavier responsibility than saying they would marry, but the boy didn't think that was heavy for him because Marie was very important in his life. Having said that, Cheyenne hugged his sister and assured her that everything would be alright because he would always be by her side. When Marie cried and hugged her brother back, a light shone around Cheyenne. He believed it was magical energy because the light resembled the light orbs from the trout procession. Maybe, after observing that phenomenon so much, it had imprinted on his body. After all, saying he wouldn't marry anyone else was the greatest confession of love. Startled, Marianne ran out of the room while Shan realized that he had discovered magical energy in a world where magic didn't exist. For that reason, he promised to create this art in this universe where he had reincarnated.